Hey, what's up? Santi here. Today I have a bit of a different video idea for you, and this is reviewing August Bradley's latest video. If you don't know who August Bradley is, I'll leave a link in the description. He's an amazing creator. He actually makes a lot of content around Notion in particular and systems that he's developed in order to make Notion even more powerful, right? So either way, the latest video that he has is Obsidian versus Notion when it comes to knowledge management. So we're gonna be checking that out, and I want to share a bit of my thoughts on it. So yeah, let's open it right now. Here we go.
Today I'm going to share my thoughts on the option of using Obsidian or some other platform for the purpose of knowledge management in a life operating system that's otherwise all built in Notion.
Let's get to it.
Possible to be successful Knowledge Vault outside of Notion?
I guess the question is kind of saying like, is Notion the only way to do it? And now, well, I assume August is gonna start talking about perhaps from a perspective of should you just use one application versus two? I don't know. Let's see what he says.
Obsidian for that. It can be done with Evernote. It can be done with other systems. I would say there are really strong inherent systemic benefits to having a single system under one roof on one platform.
Yeah, I'm really curious on what he's gonna say regarding this. Is it gonna be like just keep things under one roof instead of like diversifying in different apps? Let's see. I don't know.
Platforms for the Knowledge Vault alone. You get some unique benefits of those platforms. Every platform has pros and cons, but you lose the emergence that comes from a single integrated system. And so I would highly recommend, at least starting out, to do it in Notion, get familiar with Notion, then you can try others and compare it to Notion.
Well, okay, yeah, that's interesting. So he says for most people starting Notion, we gotta understand that he's talking to an audience that is only perhaps familiar with Notion, or that's the main program that they use for the knowledge management. I personally advocate for using several applications, even as a beginner. We'll talk more into that. I'm sure he's gonna discuss more about that, so let's see.
And then you have a siloed Knowledge Vault separately. First of all, it's going to be more manual work to bridge between them. You're not gonna have things resurfacing in context as easily, or nearly as easily. I mean, that's the reason that I believe the PPV Knowledge Vault system is more powerful than any other system I've ever seen on any other platform.
PPV, by the way, is key system. It stands for, if I'm not wrong, pillars, pipelines, and vaults. So that's something he made up and he talks a lot about.
If you have an Obsidian database, you are not gonna have the resurfacing in context. Now, I will say, so I don't see any real value in doing it in Evernote or Docs or anywhere that's just traditional old school style note taking.
Okay, yeah, so that's a really good point. There's really not much point in using one of these old school applications like Evernote, OneNote. I agree with that. If you're gonna combine several applications, you do need to make sure that they are at least like modern applications that are helping you advance knowledge. And like, I feel there's been a big push of new applications actually trying to help you organize things versus some of the older ones. They don't really help. They're just like a place where you can clutter things up. So I agree with that. So if you're gonna combine more than one application, whether that's with Notion or with Obsidian, yeah, definitely make sure that you're using a good tool, right? So I agree with that. Let's see.
That Roam and Obsidian represent. This is sort of the networked thought idea. And there is a benefit to that over Notion. And then there are, well, actually several benefits of Notion over that. So let me talk about the pros and cons of these two types of systems for Knowledge Vaults, since the topic came up and this has been a popular.
For those of you that might be wondering what's the difference, the network thought that he's talking about is how Obsidian creates this graph, views, disconnections, and backlinks, and this type of connection that is way more profound than what Notion actually does. Notion is a lot of individual databases that can be connected to one another, or if you're really crazy, you can have a master table or database that connects a lot of concepts in one. However, it's very unlikely that anyone's going to use just one main database in Notion to connect everything. You usually split it up, and if you want to connect them, you can, and then you use Notion's built-in search and that kind of stuff. But you could see it as Obsidian is one huge database, whereas Notion is a bunch of databases connected together in the same interface, in the same platform. Yeah, I'm sure he'll talk more about it, so let's see.
Notion is going to enable resurfacing in context because all of the context of your system are already in Notion in PPV. So that's not going to be doable in Obsidian.
Okay, yeah, I would disagree that that's not doable in Obsidian, because it is doable in Obsidian. It's just that I don't think it's as easy to actually achieve them. Because if you think about a database, like a Notion database, there is an equivalent in Obsidian that you can do called data view. You know, like that is using a plugin called data view, and you can run queries. It's just that it's not as beginner friendly and it's way way more complex in my opinion, which is why I personally don't recommend using just Obsidian as both a note-taking system as well as a task management system. I think that it's way better to use a dedicated task manager, something like Amazing Marvin, which I'm making a video about, so check it out somewhere there, or something like Todoist, or something dedicated for task management. Whereas Notion, it is possible to clutter and just put everything in Notion and just be like, okay, everything goes in here, and I'm kind of forcing it. To me, I feel that is a bit over complex, and personally, I've tried it. I've tried to have everything in Notion. There's so many cons that I have in my mind for why I don't advocate for having absolutely everything in Notion. Yes, you can have a lot, and you can use Notion quite heavily, but I wouldn't rely on Notion as the only place to have everything. Hope that made sense. I'm sure he's going to discuss more about that, and I'll probably get more riled up about this topic. But either way, let's see.
If you are drawn to the appeal of this serendipitous networked thought idea. So the idea of the networked thought platforms, which is Roam and Obsidian, and an increasing number of copycats. I mean, Roam started it, Obsidian's a copycat, the rest are copycats.
Okay, he's really calling out on Obsidian, and I need to back up my Obsidian peeps because I do not believe that Obsidian is a copycat of Roam. I don't think that's fair, actually. I won't deny that there's copycats or like apps that are obviously inspired from Roam research, such as Loxic, which I'm a huge fan of, but even Loxic has admitted that without Roam research, Loxic wouldn't exist. Obsidian is not like that. Yes, it might have had some influence from Roam, but the moment you start using or you get very familiar with both Roam and Obsidian, you realize that they're not the same. First, Roam is an outliner and is very block centered, so each block is kind of an individual thing that you can connect to each other, whereas in Obsidian is more about the node, and you can have folders and you can have a very flexible level of organization and different hierarchies, which are not possible in Roam. The philosophy of Obsidian, having everything in local files, it's its biggest feature, right? It's something that is nowhere close to what Roam is doing, but I'm willing to argue that Obsidian did enough innovation to its system. It's unique enough, or at least different enough from Roam research, that it doesn't deserve to be called a copycat. That's what I believe. I'm happy to debate because, yeah, people can debate anything. I'm sure there's some inspiration, but I don't think Obsidian is a copycat of Roam at all. So, yeah.
But Obsidian's free and Roam has become expensive. So Obsidian
Yeah, that is true.
has taken over in popularity. So the advantage is you have, as you enter things, they're effortlessly connecting to other things in the system. And they create a really nice visual network view of hubs and spokes and connectivity across all these thoughts and ideas. It's really cool.
Here, August is obviously making reference to the graph view, and you can actually see these connections in Obsidian, which is something you cannot do in Notion. But beyond that, I think the graph view in Obsidian is more of a representation of what is going on. And I think August totally gets that, so it's not like he doesn't know how Obsidian works in that sense. So we'll see.
In that it creates a serendipity where you have ideas connecting in ways that you wouldn't have thought on your own. That you get sort of surprise connections. And really that's one of the real strengths or ways to be creative. The central way to be creative is not to come up with really original ideas, it's to connect unusual ideas. Well, that's really how most creativity happens. So the ability to have unexpected connections.
Yeah, that is true, right? Like Obsidian is all about that. It's all about this serendipity. And I just don't feel that is really there in Notion. It just feels like something you have to force your way into making it happen in Notion, whereas in Obsidian is way more likely that you stumble upon something like that.
Is really cool and valuable. The problem is it creates a big mess that you can't find what you're looking for. So you get the surprise.
What? Okay, I don't want to interrupt too much because I'm sure he's gonna speak some sense in here, but did he just say that Obsidian is hard to search for what you're looking for? That it's hard to find what you're looking for in Obsidian. Well, Obsidian's search functionality is at least 10 times faster than Notion. You can run very advanced queries that you cannot do in Notion at all. And there's amazing features that actually make things very searchable, like tags and links, which is something that Notion doesn't have, right? Either way, let's see.
But you don't have a very good organization and it's hard to find what you're looking for. Whereas in Notion, you can.
Okay, yeah, the thing about organization is that in Obsidian, it does feel like you have to make your own organization. I'll give that to August. That is a fair point. Because Notion, let's say, has a bit of a more opinionated way in which you should organize your stuff, whereas Obsidian kind of leaves it up to you. So yeah, for beginners, perhaps Notion is more approachable and easier to organize things on, but I wouldn't say that it's easier to lose stuff in Obsidian. I actually think that it's easier to clutter Notion and to lose things very easily. Of course, a lot of the things that August is saying is from the system he's developed that is very advanced, it's a very good system, right? So yeah, I don't know if this applies to like the normal users of each app and how they would normally use things. So yeah, outside of his system, I don't really know if Notion is that good at organizing things. However, with his system, it definitely is.
Because we have this, and this is not native to Notion, this is really specific design and PPV. This is what sets...
Yeah, so that's what we were saying. That is his system, and this resurfacing in context is really not a strength of Notion. It's actually a strength of what PPV... Sorry, what August PPV... Can't say that, of what August PPV system is capable of doing, right? So that's a great point.
That's PPV apart from even other Notion systems, is the resurfacing in context. So it's going to help you remember to bring in things that you had at one point thought would be good connections, which to me is the single most valuable thing, because that's going to also help you be creative. Your previous ideas will continue to live and they won't be forgotten and disappear.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting point, right? Do I want to bring this up now? Yes, okay, I think I will. So one of the biggest strengths of Obsidian is longevity, right? Is keeping your nodes for the long term, decades from now, right? Because these are files that you own, they're in your computer, you can back them up as you wish. Actually, if you're organized and responsible for your own nodes, you won't lose them. Whereas Notion, we're putting everything we own in the hands of the Notion gods and being like, okay, if you want to delete these files, go ahead, do that. You know, there's not much we can do. Yes, we can export certain things, but like I feel that we do not have enough control over our Notion data, and that is one of the biggest problems of Notion, I believe. Yes, you can develop powerful systems like August systems, for instance, of course, but one of the biggest weaknesses of Notion is actually how your data relies on someone else's hands, right? So keeping your nodes long term for decades, I don't know if it's 100% possible with Notion alone. Let's see.
But you do get more of the serendipity in the network thought platforms. Some people value that more than anything. That's fine.
Yeah, that is a great point. Like if you do value more of that, Obsidian is way better at that. I don't think Notion does that at all by itself, unless you have a really good system. And it still kind of is not very... Notion is a bit more clunky in that sense. And the fact that there really isn't like a powerful use of backlinks, there is some. That is a big weakness for Notion, I believe.
And the other problem though I see with network thought platforms is at first it's nice because you get this connectivity, but as you add more and more and more, the clutter in lines connecting all of them becomes just more and more complex.
Okay, yeah, this is a great point. He's talking about like how if you develop a graph view in Obsidian, it becomes so big that it's unmanageable, right? And I agree, I know what he's saying. It's just that the problem is that this clutter can happen in Notion. This clutter can happen anywhere. The thing is that in Obsidian, you can visualize it. What's good about Obsidian is that you can filter and narrow it down and narrow your searches. I don't believe that it's useful to just see your massive graph view and try to navigate things in there. Yeah, it does get cluttered, so I 100% agree with that. But the clutter is just something that happens when you are deorganized over time. So I honestly believe that Notion is way worse at the clutter if you don't have a solid system. Again, August advocates for his system, and his system is very powerful and it helps keep this clutter in control. But just because you don't see the clutter in the form of a graph view doesn't mean that the clutter isn't there, right? Yeah, either way, still the connections in Obsidian, they do not clutter the system. You know, like the more connections you have, the more useful the system is. It's not like having more connections is a bad thing, right? Either way, yeah, he was mid-sentence, so I'm sorry about that.
And cumbersome, and you can't make any sense out of this incredible spider web of connections. So it also seems to have a scaling limit, whereas our PPV system scales beautifully, bigger and bigger and bigger over the years and years and years you might be using it. So
Again, that's a very important strength of his system, rather than what Notion offers by itself, right? Yeah, I don't want to be against Notion. Notion is it's a great tool. It's just that I'm trying to create content here by being a contrarian, but no, I do agree with a lot of the things August says, of course.
Now you might use the network thought approach on Roam and Obsidian for a specific research project. And then perhaps you migrate the best nuggets or insights back over to your knowledge vault. I don't know.
No, yeah, of course. Like doing that back and forth I don't think is a good idea. I honestly approach this the opposite. A passing by project that I don't need to keep for the long term, I might organize that in Notion because the Notion databases are way better than what you can do in Obsidian. So for that, I do believe Notion is way better. That is why I don't just use Obsidian. I don't think Obsidian is an all-in-one solution for everything. Notion can be an all-in-one solution, but I think it hits very hard roadblocks that long-term is not a good solution. The fact that it's not data that you own, and the fact that it's really slow and can get very easily over-complex. Right? Those are the three main cons for Notion. However, it does have amazing features. The databases for me is a place where I can organize these projects. I can organize things very nicely. And then whenever I'm done with that project and I find something valuable that I want to keep long term, I move it to an application that I can own the files to, and I can revisit those files in decades. Obsidian does that, Notion doesn't. Having something that under one same roof, so everything in Notion, definitely has some advantages that I don't think I'll ever reap the benefits from with my current system, where I use Obsidian, I also use Notion, and I use Logseq, and I use a separate task manager. That's definitely something that I'm losing on because I cannot have all of those under the same roof. But then again, I don't want to, because I think there's so many cons to having everything under one same roof. That is maybe where we disagree. I think August really advocates for having everything in one place, whereas I believe it's better to diversify and make the most out of each app and its strengths, right?
Or the visualization. So I agree, it would be really nice to have that.
Yeah, and the graph view, that'd be really cool, but I don't think it'll happen in Notion.
It seems to me it could be done within a single database. It'd be hard across multiple databases.
Sorry for pausing it there, August. You were just putting your glasses. Either way, that is a good point, right? Like, that's what I was saying. Like, Notion has individual databases, whereas Obsidian, you can think of the whole thing as one database. That's why it's one main graph view, is one database by itself, whereas Notion is divided into different parts. So yeah, it's fundamentally different, like August was saying.
The further they close the gap, the better. And they have closed the gap a lot since Roam first launched. So, I mean, Roam's not getting closer to Notion, but Notion's getting closer to the feature set of Roam.
Good point. That is interesting. I haven't considered that. But I don't want to assume what August is talking about, but perhaps the backlinks that Notion kind of integrated. Yeah, that's not advanced enough to say that it's closer to Roam. However, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really know if Notion has done anything to get closer to like Roam. Guys, do let me know if you know the answer to this. I honestly don't know if Notion has done anything to get closer to Roam, like this network of thought idea. But yeah, I do agree that Roam hasn't tried, or even Obsidian hasn't really tried to incorporate these amazing databases, tables, very flexible and visual, beautiful tables that you can filter and you can sort. That's something that Obsidian doesn't do. It's something that Roam doesn't do. So I would love to see that, but I honestly don't know if it's possible. Either way.
Roam and Obsidian do what? 3 or 4% of what Notion does, and Notion does what, 75 or 80% of what Roam and Obsidian do. So
come on, August, you're just trying to piss everyone off. I mean, yeah, you're right, because Notion does do a lot more, right? I have a video on this in case anyone wants to see it. Like, it's about having it's somewhere here, that's why I'm pointing like crazy. But having an all-in-one solution, this is a Swiss Army knife, versus having a toolbox of different tools, each one for the right job. That is a philosophy I subscribe to a lot more when it comes to productivity and PKM. Whenever I need to organize my tasks, I use my task manager. Whenever I need to take notes, I use Obsidian. Whenever I need to do a database with filters and stuff like that, I use Notion. Versus having one app that does everything, like a Swiss Army knife, but does everything poorly. Like, have you ever tried to cut with the Swiss Army knife scissors? They're the worst. Just use real scissors. So yeah, it is true that Notion does a lot more, but it does everything a little bit worse than if you were to use an app made for that purpose. With that said, I don't want to trigger anyone too much. There's definitely advantages to what August is saying about having a system all under one roof, so I won't discard this as a bad idea. It's just not the philosophy that I subscribe to when it comes to PKM.
How would you create a Zettel system in the Knowledge Vault? I looked at the Zettel system and it just seemed overly complex for what we're trying to achieve, and I didn't see anything it achieved that we don't already have in PPV. So I know it tends to be associated with the network thought applications, but as I reviewed article after article about zettelkasten, I didn't see it doing anything that we didn't already have. So,
Okay, yeah, fair point again. Like, if your system works and you don't really feel like you can look at his face, he's awesome. You're just making fun of us at this point. But either way, yeah, zettelkasten is a huge thing, right? Like, we are all like the followers and minions of Luhmann. Nicholas Zoman with his amazing system that we all try to replicate in one way or another. And yeah, he's right. This is way more for like applications like Obsidian, where you can create connections and you can see the backlinks and you can make this network of thought. Zettelkasten plays a big role in there, and I honestly think it's one of probably the most valuable systems that you can try to incorporate. But I don't think you can achieve that in Notion, so there's really no reason to try it in Notion because Notion is just not good at that. So yeah, there you go. Carry on, my man.
It was made popular by this book, Taking Smart Notes.
How to take smart notes. Yeah.
Which I've skimmed as well.
Oh no, you didn't read it? Come on, man, you gotta read it.
So yeah, I mean, you can, it's all the same. It's tagging and associating notes with different topics. Zettelkasten has various...
Okay, no, I gotta cut him some slack because August has a very solid system that just works. And if your system works, there's no need to have to change it just to fit in. So yeah, that's fair enough.
So if you're working on a note repeatedly, fine, but I wouldn't go out of your way to just be organizing notes for the sake of organizing notes to have...
That's a good point.
...this beautiful master system. Work on them as you need to. Work on each Knowledge Vault topic as you have a need to dive into it.
That's a great point. A lot of people, especially in Obsidian, treat their notes as homework. And I don't like to treat them as homework. I like to work on the parts of my system whenever I feel like it, when it's something that I'm actually interested in doing, rather than just feeling forced by peer pressure of, you know, fitting in, again, in like the culture of PKM and just being forced to revisit things that you don't even want to revisit. So that's a great point, actually.
But I wouldn't be organizing Knowledge Vault topics or your Zettelkasten note system just because it would be cool to have it organized.
Yeah, it can become an obsession, and if you're not enjoying it, it just is not worth it. So that's a good point.
You'll do it as needed rather than as a big maintenance project, because as a maintenance project, it's going to become so burdensome and cumbersome and such a chore. It's not going to sustain. So use it as needed across all of the system. So
yeah, I like that. I mean, there definitely needs to be a bit of a balance. Like for me, like working on these things as I feel the pull and the curiosity that is pulling me into actually working on my system and researching whatever thing that I'm researching if I want to, is definitely something that I rely on fully on my curiosity and on what I'm interested in the moment, right? And if you get joy out of doing that, then definitely do it, because there's definitely the other side of just doing everything because you want to be 100% productive all of the time. And I think that's a dangerous trap, you know, if you're not enjoying things, like you need to find a balance between actually being productive and actually enjoying what you're doing, because otherwise you fall into weird territory where there's no joy.
It's a cool system. And if you're really engaged with that range of notes at that level, like you're researching a book, for example, I could see doing that, because then you're going to need to go through them thoroughly, multiple times, reorganize them massively. So I could see a Zettelkasten system implemented for a specific big scale project, but to do it comprehensively on everything in your Knowledge Vault is just way too much. It's too much time, it's too much burden.
Yeah, well, that's again where we disagree. The Zettelkasten is like a comprehensive system of everything rather than project based. I would compare Zettelkasten to his system, the PPV system, kind of as an equivalent, with the exception that he's very focused on task management and project management. But as a knowledge base, as a knowledge system, the Zettelkasten is really powerful by itself, and I don't think it should be taken as lightly as August takes it. But again, he has a system that he already reaps all the benefits from, and is one that he recommends to his audience, so I totally respect that, and I think it's really good, actually. It got pretty heated, but again, I have massive respect for August. He's an amazing creator, amazing thinker. He's leaps ahead of where I am in developing a system that he can share with others, so I honestly envy him a lot for that. I think he's incredible. I learned so much from him. So August, if you're watching this, please don't take anything that I said as a disrespect to you. It's just points of disagreement that we have that I honestly think it's super healthy to actually have these disagreements, and your take on this is super insightful, and I really appreciate you sharing this. With that said, as you can see, I'm a bit more biased towards Obsidian, so if you do want to learn Obsidian, definitely check out my Obsidian course in the description. And I'm actually, because I also value Notion, and I think it's an amazing tool for certain aspects of your system, particularly learning to make powerful databases that you can filter through, because it is better at that than Obsidian is. I still recommend learning Notion, so if you do want to learn it, I'm working on a Notion course, so definitely check out the link in the description if you're interested in that. It should be coming soon, and of course your response and your interest in it would help me know if that's something I should prioritize or not. Either way, let me know if you enjoyed this type of different video, and with that said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.